My name is Mark, this is Zen Talk, and today we're talking about religious authority. So there was an experiment done years and years ago called the Milgram Experiment, in where, number one, it kind of showed that subjects were likely to obey those who they believed had authority, and two, the authority came from the perception of the subject based upon the authority's attire, such as wearing a white lab coat, maybe a badge, name tags, some kind of uniform, or even like expensive clothing, like a couple $1,000 business suit. Sometimes the authority is also reinformed by holding a clipboard, having a higher seat than the other people, and other accessories such as a stethoscope, a gun, or a badge. Lastly, the attitude of the authority towards the subject indicating superiority. So people are likely to surrender to an authority figure based upon their perception rather than the facts. So let's talk about priests and monks. There's a common misconception about the professional religious order members, and that would be your priests and monks, that they are experts in the religion, and especially with the metaphysics and the lore. That's a big misconception right there. That they have extensive training in comparative religion. Again, another big misconception. That they are more holy and more enlightened than the laymen. And that they know the secrets or the teachings that laymen are not privy to. So again, this pretty much sums up the kind of authority that priests and monks may have, just simply based upon the fact that they shave their head or wear robes or have a collar on, or indicate something about being a member of a professional religious order. In truth, though, it is very rare to find a PhD level professional religious order member, in where most are just seminarian students who only know the religious order's methods and dogma and not much more than that. So this is something that it's interesting to kind of make a comparison. A lot of people assume that here in America that police officers are also lawyers and that they are trained extensively in law, which is a complete misconception about a police officer. Most of them are not trained in law. They do not have lawyer degrees, and they're not barred in any of the courts. So this is something that a professional law enforcer, kind of the misconceptions about them, you kind of see that compared to the misconceptions about the professional religious order members, in that people just assume they have all of this extensive training and knowledge, and that they are very holy, and that they know secret teachings and things that people outside of the order are not privy to. And honestly, the person in the religious order only knows what the religious order tells them, and not much beyond that. Okay, so what does Buddhist say about the authority? So the monks of the Sangha see it as their responsibility to teach the laymen. Now, this is their view. It does not come from the sutras. It does not come from the Buddha. It just comes from the monk Sangha, or what they would sometimes call it, the Bhikkhu Sangha itself. And they take the responsibility. They take it upon themselves to teach the laymen. This is not in the sutras. This is not something that Buddha said to go do. They just do it. And now this may be from a time in where monks were taught to read, and where the average layman was illiterate. And you especially see that in early Christianity, and Christianity through the Dark Ages and Middle Ages, and even going into the early industrial age, where the illiteracy among the peasants was very high. And those that were able to go to a religious school, who, the monks and the priests, they were taught to read. So, this was from those times. So again, I'm going to state that there is no actual Buddhist scripture that gives any monk or monks or any church religious order the authority over laymen. All right, so secular Buddhism. So this is a movement within Theravada that tends to be a direct challenge of the authority of the Bhikkhu Sangha. And how the Bhikkhu Sangha is those guys, and it's only men, that shave their head and wear the yellow robe or the orange robe, depending upon what part of southern Asia they're from. And they assert their authority as absolute and final. And they basically base their authority, like I said, upon their own decision that they are responsible for teaching the laymen. Now, the Bhikkhu Sangha is actually many Bhikkhu religious orders. There's more than just one religious order in Thailand and Burma. There's actually multiple different religious orders in those countries, and they all have different rules and different customs and different ceremonies. And they follow the suttas, which are the Pali Canon, though they all have different interpretations and rituals. And each jockey for position with the monarchy or the military juntas that control southern Asia. And this is a very true thing down here about the trying to appease the monarchy or the military dictatorships that are control those countries. So the Southern Asian Bhikkhu Sangha tends to resemble the Catholic Church of the 14th century, as a comparison. So let's talk for a moment about the Zen Priest. So the priest is just a member of a religious order who might be in charge of a temple, and that is might. Sometimes many priests go through the training, but there's no temple for them to man or to head or to be part of. So they're just sort of out after they go through the training, they're on their own. The priest may be in charge of the grounds or the structure, but actually has no religious authority over the laymen. And this is a true statement. You will actually hear this from laymen in Japan, that the priests really have no authority over them. The priests of an order, they're taught the priestcraft, the ceremonies and the rituals that the laymen pay for, such as marriages, funerals, seasonal rites, and remembrances. None of this gives the priest any authority over the laymen. Now, in Japan, you will find that the laymen will pay, they will pay thousands of dollars for the priest to do these rites, these ceremonies, especially funerals, and remembrances of departed relatives. And by no means does this give the priest any authority. The priest is basically performing a service for money for the layman. So the Japanese Zen priest takes on a cultural position within the church, mostly the Sodashu, that is a rigid and inflexible and demands obedience and compliance. Now, a lot of people don't understand this part. That the Sodashu is a very dogmatic organization, and you want to be part of the Sodashu. You obey them without question, and you're obedient and compliant to them. If you decide to go do your own thing, they'll tell you to go to America and do it. And many Japanese men have done that in the past. Zen in the West is not associated with the Japanese Sodashu. However, many Western Zen organizations model after the Sodashu in creating a top-down authoritarian church that often ends up being cults, and it leads to abuses. Zen priests who learn the Japanese priestcraft find no ability to thrive outside of the church cult, and are stuck to remain in the church cult. And this is a true thing. Many people that I have known who have gone through the Zen Priest training programs here in America. The Westerners have done this. They learn the Japanese priestcraft, but there's nowhere for them to go. There's no temple. There's no land. They just get stuck in this church cult thing, and it's quite sad, and it leads to a lot of bitterness within the Zen priest, who realizes that there's no call for them outside of the organization. In reality, there really is no such thing as a Zen priest. That is a complete fabrication of a culture and a times when temples were educational centers for the youth, and the religion was state-sponsored and took on a political twist. So, in Japan, like I said, the priest or the Zen priest, you got to remember that in these times there was no such thing as public education. The peasants were not taught to read. The peasants were poorly educated at best. It'd be comparable to a kindergarten or a third grade level of reading, at best, for the peasants. And the more wealthy would send their children to the temples, where the Zen priests were already educated in reading and writing and many things. And so these temples became education centers for the wealthy and the elite and the royalties and the shoguns and the provincial governors of Japan. So you also got to remember that the religion, or Zen, was state-sponsored, meaning whoever was in control of the area, and if they said that this temple is protected by me, the shogun, the warlord, well, that kind of tended to be the religion of the people. You don't go against what a bunch of guys with weapons say. And this led to the temples taking on a political twist. And we definitely saw this during World War II, when Zen Buddhism was definitely on the forefront, instigating war with the West. So just to come up with a few conclusions here, Buddhism, in this ecclesiastical form, is forced to make some changes. Now, ecclesiastical is the churchy way. The iron grip of the religious orders on the laymen has led to a massive attrition of believers. Few want to be monks nowadays. Even in Thailand, this is a big issue. I have corresponding with a BQ, a Western BQ, living in Thailand, and he tells me that they have a massive monk attrition, that they have temples that are being abandoned, that they just simply lack people helping the BQ orders, and the religion is more or less in a decline. The religious orders' interpretations are found often to be inaccurate and often very political when the researchers dig into them. Now, there's a whole history on sutras that you can. There's a book on Amazon you can buy. I believe it's called The History of Sutras, and it talks about the tinkering and the expanding of some passages and the deletion of other passages within the sutras, because they were edited to support whatever religious or political notions that were in favor at the time. Western Buddhism is rejecting the authoritarian reach of the Southern Asian sects. And we see this often within the secular Buddhism, which is mostly a rejection within Theravada of this harsh, ultra-authoritarianism of the Bhikkhu Sangha. Zen in the West becomes a cult when attempting to follow the Japanese Zen church model. It really has nowhere else to go but become a cult. And lastly, there is no religious authority over you. And I don't know how else to to say that no monk, no priest, no church has any religious authority over you, period. It's not in the sutras. Buddha did not tell the monks that they have any authority over the laymen. In fact, in the sutras, as we call them in Zen, the Buddha made no difference between laymen and the ordained or the bhikkhus. And in fact, Vilamakirti was a layman who the Buddha claimed to be his highest disciple. So that was a little bit of a slap to the bhikkhus of his time, where they couldn't. Some of them just really couldn't understand how a layman could be considered a high disciple over them. So this is within the sutras we know that the Buddha made no distinction between the ordained and the layman. Alright, thank you for watching my presentation. Please remember to like and subscribe. And you can now support this channel on Patreon. It's the first link in the comment below.